Hey Profit fans, and welcome to this week's episode of Profit. Today is my top 20 worst cards of all time. It's been the funnest and possibly longest episode that I've ever done. It's going to be great and I really hope you enjoy it. As you can tell, I'm making some changes to the format, trying to up the quality a little bit, and add in a couple of, special effects. So, unfortunately, this is going to be the last time that you guys are going to get to see
You're Reggie Rocket with my nonsense and hopeless Poke products. You won't stop till you're about to the top with all the hot bits. Hit with the metagame train, the reigning top kids at the top of his game, and you can't hit on top this. You want the best tricks? I suggest you profit. You want a mess split? I suggest you profit. Once we started rolling, you know you can't stop it. Let's go and get some lessons from JWittz and Profit. Yeah,
that. I'm thinking that I'm going to keep the theme song, but re-record it, remaster it, maybe add some electronic music instead of me just beatboxing, and I'm definitely going to change the video. So, in the future, expect a lot of cool changes from Profit, and we'll see if I can really work out this equipment that I've got. But anyways, you don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about my top 20 worst Pokemon list. So, before I go over the list, I'm going to explain the 5 rules that I use to judge exactly how bad a card can be. Rule number 1. The cards are going to be judged by how unuseful they were in their respective formats. The unlimited format, where every card from every set is included, might have some insight, but for the most part, it's not going to be predominant in how I judge these cards. Otherwise, you might say that base set Gastly, one of the worst cards out there, evolves into Stormfront Gengar and that makes him good. No, I can't really use that judgment. I'm going to judge the cards based on what set they came from. Rule number 2. If a card could be replaced by a better card in its respective format, then you assume the replacement. For example, to take base set Gastly again. By the fossil set, there was a Gengar out, but there was a new Gastly that was better than base set Gastly. So you can't really take into account that the base set Gastly evolved into fossil Gengar, because there was already a fossil Gastly that was a lot better. Rule number 3. If a card can evolve, you have to assume all of its evolutions in the time that it was released. So for example, most Magikarp cards, they're terrible, 30 HP, 1 for 10 attacks, but every Magikarp evolves into a Gyarados, and for the most part, most Gyarados cards are pretty darn good. Same thing goes from Hoppip to Jumpluff. Rule number 4. Cards will be judged on how useless they would be in your hand if you were playing an actual game of Pokemon. For the most part, this means that the Pokemon cards are going to be a little bit more useful than the trainer cards, because Pokemon, even if they have terrible attacks, can still be used to attack and win you the game, whereas trainer cards just burn a hole in your hand if they're terrible. And rule number 5 is to remember that this is just my opinion piece. It's not necessarily the best worst cards of all time list, but it's definitely a pretty good grasp of how bad cards have gotten over time. The cards included range from base set all the way to Heart Gold, Soul Silver. That's almost a dozen-year gap. So, without further ado, my 20 worst cards of all time. Brace yourselves.
Number 20 is Mom's Kindness from Majestic Dawn and Bill from Heart Gold, Soul Silver. There's just always been better draw, and they're both a slap in the face to the original Bill, who could be played as often as you like being a trainer, versus these cards, which use up your supporter of the turn. While not as useless as many of the other cards that I'll post, they've always been particularly hated by the competitive player base. Number 19 is Marowak from Jungle. Compared to the other Pokemon I'll show, he's not that bad, but he holds possibly the worst support attack of all time. Call for Friend takes a whopping 3 energies to search your deck for a basic fighting Pokemon to put on your bench. Unbelievable! Who in their right mind would evolve up to a Marowak, attach 3 energies, and then search their deck for a basic fighting Pokemon to put on the bench? Not to mention, in this format we had the old Bill and Professor Oak, so there really was no reason to have a search like this. The rest of the card is mediocre at the very best, but Call for Friend was bad enough to include him on here. Number 18 is Mary's Impulse from Expedition. I don't care how lucky you are with coin flips, odds are odds. And when your odds tell you that you have a 50% fail rate as your supporter for the turn, that's pretty bad. Factor in that even if you do get the first heads, you have a 50% chance after beating the odds of failing to stay at the equivalent of a Mom's Kindness or a new Bill. You've got one terrible card. Number 17 are the Shining Pokemon from Neo Revelation and Neo Discovery. Released in the form of just Magikarp and Gyarados in Revelation, and then a whopping 8 editions in Destiny, the Shining Pokemon were an afterthought and just a collection of rare, sparkly cards with hard-to-use and low-damaging attacks. Admittedly, they looked pretty cool, but they were awful. In the vein of SP Pokemon, you can play all of them as basics, but you can only have one of each in your deck. Look at these attacks. Shining Charizard's White Hot Flame costs 5 energies, forces you to discard 2 energy to do 100, then you flip a coin, and if tails you do 30 to yourself. Or how about Shining Steelix? 4 energy for 80 damage, flip a coin. If heads you do 10 to all bench, if tails the attack fails, and either way Steelix can't attack the next turn. They were just pretty cards to look at, and really unplayable despite how cool they looked. Number 16 are the EX Pokemon from Ruby and Sapphire EX. What a horrible way to introduce a new gameplay mechanic. The EXs from Ruby and Sapphire revealed that higher HP basics with attacks just barely better, and in some cases worse than their Haymaker counterparts years ago, weren't worth giving up 2 prizes at all. While some are better than others, the group in general is pretty awful, with cards like Scyther EX with 80 HP, 1 for 10 and you flip to prevent damage, 3 for 50, and 1 retreat for a card classically known for 0, or Magmar EX with 90 HP, 1 for 10 and your opponent flips to attack, 3 for 40 and burned, and 2 retreat. These were without a doubt the worst EXs to see the light of day. Number 15 is the Kabuto and Kabutops line from Fossil. This set of Pokemon deserves particular attention for being the lowest HP set of 3 stages ever released. Mysterious Fossil is a basic with 10 HP, Kabuto is a stage 1 with 30 HP, and Kabutops is a stage 2 with 60 HP. Not to mention, all 3 cards are terrible. Kabuto's body sort of protects him, but he still gets one shot by Jungle Scyther without Swords Dance, or Hitmonchan with 2+ power, etc. Doing 1 for 10 is unimpressive by all means. Kabutops isn't as bad, but at 60 HP for a stage 2, he still gets one shot by all the same conditions that would have one-shot Kabuto. While 2 for 30 was decent at the time, you'll never be able to use his 4 energy attack for 40 damage and heal 20. In fact, you'll never be able to heal damage with him because he'll never have damage counters on him because he'll be knocked out. Number 14 is Misty Scoldine and Brock Zubat from Gym Heroes. These guys aren't on my list just for their lack of playability, but for sentimental reasons too. Misty Scoldine's 1 for 30 on a coin flip is pretty bad, but there's something else that made these cards so painful. Both cards were rares, and they had the horrible power of finding their way into way too many packs to count to ruin my day. Misty Scoldine and Brock Zubat are some of the worst, if not the worst, rare Pokemon cards of all time. Number 13, the Crystal Pokemon from Aquapolis and Skyridge. In an awkward transition from Wizards of the Coast to Nintendo, we get another set of cool-looking promos with terrible multi-energy attacks. With the strange premise of attach a basic energy and become a new type, these cards seemed interesting, but most of them were just more expensive attacks, like Crystal Golem's 4 for 50 Earth Bomb, which is 1 fire, 1 fighting, 1 grass, 1 colorless, deals 20 damage to yourself, and 10 damage to all benched Pokemon on both sides. Not to mention, these guys weren't auto-basic Pokemon like the Shining Pokemon were. If they were evolved Pokemon, you had to actually evolve them up. Number 12 is Blaine's Moltres. Blaine's Moltres was unique, but not in a good way. It was the first card ever to have an attack cost of 5 energies. So, for 5 energies, what do you get? 90 damage. For this alone, Moltres would still be a pretty bad card, but not on this top 20 worst list. But the effect of the attack is the real kicker. Flip a coin, if tails, shuffle Moltres and all cards attached back into your deck. What a waste. Imagine attaching all 5 energy just to do 90 damage, and then having to shuffle yourself back into the deck, wasting all your effort. If Blaine's Moltres is your last Pokemon and you hit tails, you lose for shuffling yourself in. One of the worst rewards for hard work that the game has ever released. The only thing Moltres' 5 energy attack will get you is a headache. Number 11 is Arcanine from Supreme Victors. Even if you factor in all the cards ever printed, you'd find fierce competition in finding a worse attack than Arcanine SV's Combustion. Regarded as pretty weak set due to the countless weak Japanese promo cards lumped with it, Supreme Victors had its share of terrible cards. So, what makes Arcanine SV such a terrible card? You have to consider the format he's in, which is the same playable format that we have right now. 80 HP for a stage 1 is low, 3 retreat is awful, and 4 energy for 40 damage with no effect is a monstrosity. 3 for 40 in this format isn't good. 2 for 40 today isn't good. Heck, even 1 for 40 isn't very good for a stage 1, when you can get 1 for 60 out of Donphan Prime. Few Pokemon have ever had such a horrible high energy attack, and if you consider the format Arcanine's in compared to the older ones, this card is really terrible. Number 10 is Full Heal, and all Full Heal variants. Because in nearly all scenarios, as long as the game has been played out, special conditions are sparsely played, and when they are, Switch is the better option. Switch also allows resetting of other special effects that weren't related to special conditions, such as not being able to retreat. Switch has been around in every rotation, thus making Full Heal always useless. Number 9 is Dunsparce from Neo Discovery. Dunsparce and Basic Gastly often duke it out for title of the worst basic Pokemon ever. How does each one weigh in? Well, seeing as you haven't seen Basic Gastly yet on the list, you know my opinion, but here are the facts. At first glance, Dunsparce doesn't look like the worst card ever material. In fact, his attack glared is 1 for 10 with Paralyze. Didn't base set Electabuzz have that same attack? Well, believe it or not, the attack is the best thing about Dunsparce. At 30 HP, he'll be knocked out in one hit by just about anything in any format. Dunsparce never evolves. In fact, even today he still doesn't evolve. Being stuck at 30 HP with no room for improvement is just weak. The free retreat is nice, but it doesn't matter because you should never have that Dunsparce active, and the weakness and resistance don't do him any favors either. Number 8 is Sleep from Team Rocket. It's Basic Gastly's Sleeping Gas attack in the form of a trainer. While not as bad as wasting the attack yourself, any card with a 1/4 success rate is just awful in my book. You need to flip heads, and your opponent needs to flip tails for them to even remain asleep long enough for it to even matter. What a bad card. Number 7 is the Unknown Collection. Let's face it, the unknowns are garbage. For every unknown G, Q, and R, there's an unknown of any other alphabet letter that finds its way into your heap of unplayable commons and uncommons. I'd say only about 5% of all unknown cards released had moderate competitive success. I didn't sift through every unknown out there to figure out the worst of the worst, but I'll let you know my personal least favorite. Unknown Z. His attack is bizarre, but almost rarely used. It lets you remove damage counters off of all your unknown, and then place that many on the defending Pokemon. How would you even have damage counters on an unknown? And why would you ever rely on a 50 HP basic to do your attack? But the real kicker is the power. 0. A fitting name. The power lets you, during your turn, if you have 0 cards left in your deck, put Unknown Z from your bench face down as 1 card left in your deck. Why would you even want to do that? Here's why Unknown Z's power is horrible. Some people thought that you could use him to prevent Flygon level X from milling your deck, which discards your top card in between turns. Here's why it doesn't work. Let's say you have 2 cards left in your deck when you end your turn. In between turns, your deck will become down to 1. Then your opponent ends, you'll be down to 0, and you'll deck out when you try and draw and lose the game. Now, let's say you have 3 cards left when you end. You'll end, go down to 2, your opponent will end, you'll go down to 1 card left. After you draw, you're at 0 cards. So why not use Unknown Z's 0 power? Now you have 1 card left in your deck. When you end your turn, Flygon X will mill you immediately and you'll still lose when it comes to your turn. What a terrible power. A real 0 and an entire collection of zeros. Number 6 is Basic Gastly. The infamous Basic Gastly is so bad that the mere mention of his name is synonymous with pain. While he had solid bottom stats, like free retreat, no weakness, and a fighting resistance of minus 30, the 30 HP combined with no way to damage the opponent is just awful. Sleeping Gas only offers a 1/4 chance of ensuring that they stay asleep, while Destiny Bond can be completely worked around, either through poison or simply not attacking or Gusta winning around him. The Haunter he evolved into was terrible as well, relying on the same 1/4 odds of sleep in order to ensure an attack, and by the time Fossil Gengar was legal, another Gastly was already printed to replace this monstrosity. And now we're rounding into the top 5. Number 5 is Basic Porygon. Just like Basic Gastly, Porygon still suffers the same can't deal any damage syndrome. His first attack might have been used for fun, such as making a Hitmonchan's weakness Lightning for an Electabuzz KO or something stupid, but he's still really just a waste of your energy. Even using him in a wall with double colorless was pointless because of his fighting weakness and the fact that he only had 30 HP. With no evolutions for quite some time and no real synergy with any deck, Basic Porygon was useless. Number 4 is Charity from Gym Heroes. A simple read through of this card should let you know why it's trash. It lets you reduce your own attack power as much as you want. Why would you want to do this? The little, if only use for this card would be as a Mr. Mime counter. But in its time, every deck had a Mr. Mime counter already. Whether it be Hitmonchan's 1 for 20, Blastoise's option to attack with Squirtle, or anything else that just did less than 30 damage, there was little use to use Charity at all. Factor in that it's a rare, and it's one of the worst cards of all time. Number 3 is Alf Lithograph from Heart Gold Soul Silver. You know which one I'm talking about. The one with the text, shuffle your deck. Why would you ever want to run this card? Even if you can think of a reason for having to shuffle your deck, think about this. Any card that lets you search your deck for something, lets you shuffle your deck afterward. Dusk Ball, Quick Ball, Baby Surge, Premier Ball, Cyrus, anything. There's no reason to designate a trainer card for doing the same thing that any better card can do. And I'm sure by this point you're wondering, how can it possibly get worse than this? Well, these last 2 cards are ones in my opinion that hurt you. They don't just do nothing like Alf Lithograph, but they actually put you at a worse advantage in your game if you play them. Let's do it. Number 2 is Minion of Team Rocket from Gym Hero. Don't let the cool art fool you. This card is one of the worst of all time. Why? Well, here's how the card goes. Flip 2 coins. If both of them are heads, choose one of your opponent's benched Pokemon and return it and all cards attached to it back to their hand. Cool. So kind of like a Dusknoir DP, except instead of being shuffled into your deck, your opponent gets the pieces back. What's the downside? If both of them are tails, your turn ends immediately. If one of them is tails, your turn ends immediately. Are you serious? Talk about a gamble. Don't look at the cool Team Rocket art, or the cool name. This card will end your turn 3 out of 4 times. If you run 4 copies, that's expecting one of them to work and the other 3 to end your turn. Even if you played at the end of your turn when you couldn't attack anyways. To have no other option but to try and play this card is pathetic. If you aren't attacking, you aren't going to win anyways. And most of the time, your opponent's best Pokemon will be active. Imagine the benefits of forcing your opponent to Super Scoop one of their benched Pokemon versus the downside of ending your turn right away. That's what I thought. 2 sets from now, Neogenesis Slowking would be played. Just imagine if your opponent had 2 of them on the field. In order to get Team Rocket's Minion to work, you'd have to hit 4 straight heads, or a 1 in 16 chance of working. One of the worst of the worst, Minion of Team Rocket should never have been played in any deck. And number 1 on my list of the worst cards of all time is Thought Wave Machine from Neo Destiny. Now I thought Minion of Team Rocket was bad. A 75% chance of ending your turn is pretty bad. But even then, there's the 25% chance that your lame effect goes through and you can still attack. If you didn't think Team Rocket was incompetent already, look at their secret invention, Thought Wave Machine. Let's take a quick look at it. Flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, return an energy card attached to your opponent's active Pokemon to your opponent's hand. Well, that's pretty bad, for a few reasons. First, the energy goes back to their hand, which means they can still play it down again the next turn. Second, you can only choose your opponent's active Pokemon, which means that if they had a baby Pokemon active to stall like Cleffa while you're building a big attacker, you could only bring the energy on the active wall Pokemon back to their hand, not even from the important Pokemon on the bench. Not to mention, you only have a 50% chance of this effect even working. And I don't care how lucky you are with coins, those aren't good odds for how bad the effect is. But the unholy terror of what makes this card an absolute abomination is the last sentence. Your turn is over now. You don't get to attack. Don't you just love the way they word that? It's like a slap in the face. After you play this already bad card, your turn just ends. There's no way around it. Just why? I really don't understand this card. It's like an insult. Just compare it to energy removal and super energy removal before it. Those were amazing and broken cards, letting you discard energy no matter what at little cost. Then, years from now, even energy removal 2 is better, which is the same as energy removal plus a coin flip. But here at least you get to discard the energy and choose which Pokemon instead of limiting you to the active. And it doesn't end your turn. What is it with Team Rocket and ending your turn? Look at Tickling Machine. Notice something in common? Everything involves coin flips to even work and ending your turn. At least Tickling Machine had a good effect. Now, I had a hard time deciding which was worse, Thought Wave Machine or Minion. Why? Because Minion has a 75% chance of ending your turn and doing nothing at all, while Thought Wave Machine only has a 50% chance of ending your turn and doing nothing at all. However, weighing this against the fact that you still have a 25% chance of getting your effect off with Minion and still continuing your turn, while Thought Wave Machine ends it instantly, I had to go with Thought Wave Machine as the victor.
Well, thanks for watching this week's episode of Profit. I hope you liked it. I'd like to do some more fun episodes and opinion pieces like this, but with the metagame approaching and Battle Road starting up, I'm finally going to start doing some tournament analysis and stuff again. I'm going to try and start releasing on a consistent schedule again. Thursday's kind of the appointed day, so we'll see how often I can keep my releases coming on Thursday. Try and let you know in advance if an episode's not going to be up, but hopefully I'll stay pretty consistent. As always, thanks for watching my episode, and have a nice weekend. Peace.
Today's information-filled Profit episode was brought to you by Stop2Shop.com, and they've got a special offer for you. If you use the coupon code PROF-IT, all caps, you get 15% off your full order. Stop2Shop.com offers a wide selection of decks, packs, single cards, sleeves, and they offer $1.99 shipping for up to 100 single cards. Be sure to check them out for your Pokemon card needs, and thanks for sponsoring Profit.